れだろゴムゴムの
無駄だ意地じゃどうにもならねえこともあるってことよ。
It's the backstory that was promised, and I hope you brought your tissues. In Zora's flashback, we saw the reason he set out to sea to become the world's greatest swordsman. With Luffy, we saw the formative moment that set him on this path to become king of the pirates. Sanji's backstory is a little different. First, let's consider what's happening as Sanji's battered brain is flooded with memories of him and Zeph. Jin has his gun pointed at Zeph. Still, Sanji and Zeph can't stop bickering, and the other cooks wonder if Sanji will just forsake Zeph and allow Jin to shoot him. Instead, Sanji tells Jin to point the gun at him. Before anyone is able to act, the Pearl intervenes, launching an attack at Sanji and telling him that if he moves, Jin will kill Zeph. Sanji is taking a beating, but he refuses to move and risk Zeph's life. He says, "I took everything away from that damn geezer. His power, his dream. I don't want that damn geezer to lose anything else." With a massive blow to his head, Sanji is transported back to that moment in his mind when Zeph lost his power and his dream. This backstory starts with a young Sanji working as a cook on a large ship. He is precocious in the way he boldly claims that the All Blue is real and that he will find it someday. He also is a bit of a brat as we see him turn his nose up at the other cooks who eat the leftover food from the customers' plates. Both of those factors come together in his desperate attempt not to wind up a victim of the pirates. He charges at Zeph, who easily kicks him through a wall, but something in Sanji refuses to quit. As he drags himself towards Zeph, only able to bite down on his ankle, he says aloud his dream of finding the All Blue. Instantly, Zeph's crew begins to laugh at this child attempting to kill their captain over a legend like the All Blue. Zeph doesn't laugh, but he does kick Sanji from his leg. However, something clearly has changed as Sanji is swept from the ship and Zeph dives in to save him. The audience is left wondering why this man who has already attacked Sanji twice immediately leapt into the ocean to save him. In this moment, Zeph is not the same sort of pirate as Luffy. He shows his brutality when he attacked this innocent vessel without much concern for the people on board. In order to save Sanji, he's forced to cut off his own leg. But on the island, he seems to be just as rugged of a pirate as he was when he kicked Sanji on the ship. He gives Sanji a small bag of food and tells him to wait on the other side of the island and to look for a ship, as going back and forth would be a waste of energy. As Sanji sits watching the sunset on his first day on that godforsaken island, his thoughts are openly hostile towards Zeph, saying that he wouldn't even tell him if a ship happened to pass. He looks at his meager offerings and he says that he can make the food stretch 20 days. The childish words ring out into the setting sun, saying that a ship will surely pass in 20 days' time. At night, he reveals his worries as he says that he doesn't want to die. The days begin to add up and we see not only Sanji's innocence, but his own humanity being ripped away from him by the pain of his hunger. It's a hard episode to watch as we see Sanji begin to wither away, his mind haunted by memories of throwing away so much food without a second thought. He is almost a skeleton when he decides to go over to Zeph's side of the island with a knife, ready to fight for his life to steal some of Zeph's food. That's when it's revealed to Sanji and the viewer that Zeph gave all the food to Sanji. This time, Sanji asks along with us, why did Zeph do this when Sanji never even asked for his help? The answer is he and Sanji share a dream, to find the All Blue. He is fast to tell Sanji that the All Blue definitely exists, but that he is no longer able to find it now that he lost his leg. But perhaps Sanji can find it. As he is teetering on death's door, he says that he wishes that he could open a restaurant in the middle of the sea that would serve as a blessing for those starving in the great expanse. It must have been difficult for Sanji to have his innocence and kindness ripped away by his hunger, turning him into a monster willing to kill the man who had done all he could to keep him alive. Dreams are weighty things, and for lofty dreams like finding the All Blue, the weight can become unimaginable. Let's remember why Zeph's crew crossed paths with Sanji's ship in the first place. They had returned from the Grand Line. This might be a stretch, but looking at the condition of Zeph and his crew, it doesn't look like the Grand Line has been a particularly rewarding endeavor. Not only that, but there is a clear disconnect between Zeph and his crew when Sanji mentions the All Blue. His crewmates laugh, but from that point on, Zeph willingly sacrifices sacrifices his leg, his food, and his dream in an attempt to save Sanji. To me, it feels like Sanji shouting out his dream in desperation created a reckoning for Zeph, where he was forced to face what he had become. He probably started young and idealistic like Sanji, but now he is surrounded by crew members who will happily plunder a ship and openly laugh at the idea of pursuing such an impossible dream. In Sanji, Zeph sees a version of himself that could still achieve his dream to find the All Blue, and he does everything in his power to make sure that Sanji can fulfill this dream for both of them. When they both make it off of the island, Sanji is not only carrying the weight of his own dream, but the dream he took from Zeph. He says he is willing to die for Zeph because that was what Zeph was willing to do for him. He says, "That damn geezer gave up his leg so that I could live. I can't repay the damn geezer for his kindness unless I risk my life for him too." He is prepared to die, even if it is in vain, if only he can keep the restaurant around for a few moments longer. Amongst the shocked faces is Zeph and Luffy. Zeph calls Sanji a brat, and Luffy appears close to losing his mind in rage. He raises his leg to the sky and brings it crashing down on the battlefield, throwing everything into chaos. We'll have to wait to see the resolution, but for now, one might ask, what was it that infuriated Luffy so much? Hey there, just had to pop in to say that last week we hit 100 subscribers. If you're new here, hi, I'm Ciano, and I'm the man who's going to rewatch and review all of One Piece. If you'd like to come along for the ride, make sure you hit that subscribe button below. Alright, let's get back to it. We can end the mystery of Luffy's rage here, as he explains openly why he smashed the fin of the Baratier restaurant. If I destroy the ship, there will be no reason for them to attack. This further infuriates Sanji, but for a moment we see Zeph laugh at Luffy's openness. Sanji says, "What do you know about the significance of the kindness I received?" To Sanji, Luffy is being a disruptive force in a conflict that he has no knowledge of. Sanji is so focused on saving the restaurant that he appears ready to attack Luffy over his outburst. And then Luffy says, "Dying isn't something you should do to repay kindness. That's not what he saved you for." With this interaction in mind, let's revisit the relationship between Zeph and Sanji. As we've seen so far, the two of them struggle to communicate and often resort to belittling each other. However, as we saw in the last episode, this act is a mask hiding the more complicated feelings between them. Despite Zeph attempting to shield Sanji from the horrors of starvation, a ship doesn't come for weeks, and Sanji learns firsthand the brutality of starvation. When Sanji realizes Zeph's kindness, he has turned into a monster willing to murder and steal from the very person who saved him. Zeph was facing an even worse situation, having lost his leg and given all his food to Sanji, yet he still gave him kindness far beyond what anyone could expect. Sanji can never get out from under the weight of what Zeph did for him. He owes his life to Zeph, and after spending it thus far trying to help Zeph achieve his dream, the only thing he can think to do is to sacrifice himself if it means saving Zeph's dream. Except Zeph smiles when Luffy begins to destroy the restaurant. In his mind, he's made it clear. He didn't save Sanji because he wanted to hold it over him. He did it because Sanji caused him to see the humanity in himself by reminding him of his own childish dream. He told Sanji his new dream of opening a restaurant in the middle of the ocean. It wasn't because he had lost his leg. He had changed, and the idea of feeding the hungry out at sea was more fulfillment than he could ask for. Besides, he had entrusted his previous dream to Sanji. He could die having never laid eyes on the All Blue, but if Sanji could find it, they would have accomplished it together. It must be frustrating for Zeph. The years pass, Sanji growing tired of living for someone else's dream, and he thinks of Zeph as an obstacle. Unable to communicate, the two of them are trapped, with Sanji feeling indebted to Zeph, and Zeph wondering why Sanji appears to have forgotten their dream. Before any of that can be answered, Jin leaps into action, stopping the pearl from attacking Sanji. What follows follows is a back and forth between Jin and Don Krieg. We learn that Don Krieg placed his trust in Jin because of his ability to act cold and unattached. It appears that his trust was well placed as Jin beats up Sanji following Don Krieg's orders. He is motivated to follow Don Krieg because of their bond, the bond of having someone Jin admires recognize him and trust him with greater responsibilities. That is, until he is actually in a position to carry out the order to kill Sanji. He begs Don Krieg for mercy as he cannot kill the person who fed him when he was at death's door. Instead, Don Krieg aims a deadly poisonous gas attack at the restaurant and orders Jin to throw his gas mask away. What's heartbreaking is that Jin follows the order, even though it means accepting his own death. Although Sanji and Jin are connected to two very different men, there is a similarity in the bond. Both of them feel somewhat paternalistic, Sanji having followed Zeph since he was saved by him, and Jin having felt recognized by someone he admired and had chosen to follow. On the surface, Zeph and Sanji can appear to be a more contentious duo, even though we have seen how the two of them both care deeply for each other. Yet that mutual care has been marred by this inability to communicate, and they carry that frustration with them every day. But Sanji is still a good person who understood the depths of empathy taught to him by Zeph. On the other side, there's Jin, who was valued by Don Krieg for his results, while he thought he was valued for something more inherent within him. Jin so badly wants to believe that Don Krieg values him as a person that he believes he deserves to die for disobeying Don Krieg's orders. There are villains in One Piece, and in our own world, who utilize the bond formed between themselves and someone who admires them. Luffy will address the punishment for those people in the following episodes, but for now, I want to focus on this final moment with the gas mask shuffle. What was it that finally caused Jin to even consider disobeying Don Krieg? It was Sanji's kindness. It was a kindness he likely had never felt from Don Krieg, yet Sanji offered it to him with no expectations of getting something in return. Despite that kindness and the vile way that Don Krieg treats him, he is unable to let go of the trust he has in his captain. It must be frustrating for Sanji and Luffy to have shown an enemy this goodwill, only to be met with blood and violence. Even when Jin sees that no such kindness exists between him and his captain, he still chooses to follow his orders to die. Good thing we have Luffy, who doesn't think about who deserves to die, and instead throws the two gas masks he grabbed to Jin and Sanji, even before he gets one for himself. We see the weapon detonate, and we must wait to see what becomes of our hero, and these two bonds that have caused so much strife.
大戦争が貴様何をしやがった。
5発パンチ入れてやった。お前の槍もうダメだな。覚悟しろよ。
Last episode, I mentioned how frustrating it was for Luffy and Sanji to have continually treated Jin with kindness, only to have him continue to side with Don Krieg. Once again, Luffy chooses kindness when he throws the two masks to Sanji and Jin. This episode picks up the moment before impact. Luffy is still searching for a mask when one is thrown at his feet, and he can't see who saved him before the weapon explodes. When the gas clears, we see Jin, maskless, standing over Sanji and forcing him to keep his own mask on. Jin collapses as the poison rips through his body and he begins to bleed from his nose and mouth. Sanji tells him that it seems that you picked the wrong man to follow. On my first watch of the previous episode, I remember groaning when Luffy gave Jin a mask. It felt like a lost cause. So strong was his allegiance to Don Krieg that he willingly threw his own gas mask into the sea because Don Krieg told him to. It felt like Luffy was risking his life for a man that didn't seem capable of recognizing true kindness anymore. Nevertheless, Luffy tried to help him. Of course, he wasn't frustrated with Jin, because for Luffy, kindness doesn't come with terms and expectations. He didn't throw the mask to Jin because he wanted his allegiance or anything from him in return. He didn't know that this final act of kindness would be what broke through to Jin and caused Jin to throw the mask back. Yet Luffy is alive because of it. It isn't part of some elaborate plan. Luffy is simply a person that benefits from the power of true altruism. When Luffy sees the good in someone, he doesn't care if they burn him in the future. He simply wants to be kind to them because that is who he is. There are villains like Don Krieg that knowingly take advantage of a friend's kindness, and to those individuals, Luffy will show no mercy. Still, Luffy remains kind-hearted, believing the best in people. Now, I want to shift our attention to the end of the episode. Zeff says himself that there is a weapon that can defeat Don Krieg's massive arsenal, a spear of blind determination that exists in the hearts of people like Luffy, that have certainty in themselves even over a fear of death. Let's get back to Zeff and Sanji. The two have never been able to properly communicate with each other, and that has led to a caring relationship becoming masked by grudges and misunderstandings. With Luffy fighting out in front of them, Zeff puts it simply: the fleet Krieg gathered, hundreds of weapons and poison. If they're all force, then that kid's spear is also force. The spear held in his heart. I know an idiot who's holding back that spear for a stupid reason. Look at Sanji's face. It's all clear now. Zeff knows better than anyone how powerful that spear is in Sanji to find the all blue. And Sanji finally sees that the only person holding him back is himself.
棒付き爆弾結構じゃねえか。今のてめえを吹き飛ばすには十分すぎる武力だぜ。ボロボロの体で何言ってもただの強がりにしか聞こえねえな。
強がってねえよ。
観念しろ。このドンクリークに一言逆らった時点で死ぬことは決まってたんだ。
死ぬか。
Thus far, we've viewed Luffy's conflict with Don Krieg through the eyes of Sanji and Zeff. The two of them watch Luffy fight with reckless abandon. Despite their inability to communicate, Zeff helps Sanji realize that the same ambition that burns in Luffy also burns in Sanji. Let's leave the two of them for now and focus in on the two actually fighting, Luffy and Krieg. Throughout the fight, Krieg uses his whole artillery of weapons and armor against Luffy. We can see how effective they are and why Krieg has been able to conquer the East Blue. His tactics are dirty and cruel, yet they fail to stop Luffy. He's been taking hit after hit, but he's still standing. And Krieg appears to be running out of tricks. Krieg still appears confident he will win as his armor takes all of Luffy's punches without taking a dent, and Luffy's response is to charge in and punch him again. It's the classic anime protagonist moment, his determination overcoming the steel armor, except it doesn't work. Luffy's punch appears to have dealt some damage, but Krieg laughs off the hit and knocks Luffy back. It doesn't stop him. Even as Krieg tells him how useless his struggle is, Luffy says, "I think I'm pretty close." Although both Luffy and Krieg have taken serious damage, they both appear confident that they will win this fight. However, there are some big differences in that confidence. Don Krieg has been surprised by Luffy several times, when Luffy punched him through the Cape of Spikes, when Luffy broke his spear, and here when his armor finally shatters. At all of these moments, Krieg's confidence is clearly shaken until he unveils his next weapon. Luffy, on the other hand, doesn't waver. Whether he is pulling darts from his legs or reeling after taking an explosion to the face, Luffy never doubts that he will win. Unlike Krieg, Luffy has faith in himself. It goes even further in the way that Luffy treats other people. Aside perhaps from food, Luffy doesn't value things over people. Although he has taken a beating, he is still standing because of kindness from his enemy and because he knows that through his power alone he will not die here. Wrapped up in this difference in character is also why Luffy would never lose to Krieg. We've spent a lot of time talking about ambition because it's what drives so many of our protagonists. On the surface, Luffy and Don Krieg appear to have the same goal, as they both are gearing up to enter the Grand Line, except that Luffy wants to be king of the pirates, while Don Krieg wants to conquer the Grand Line. The difference might appear semantic, but consider how the two of them have approached their goal so far. Don Krieg amassed a huge army, caused terror throughout the East Blue, and created an arsenal that he believed was powerful enough to amass more power in the Grand Line. Even after watching all he built fall to Mihawk's blade, he still believes that the way to reach the One Piece is through maneuvering his power through trickery and intimidation. Luffy set out to sea and began to look for a crew. Even when all he had was Zoro and a dream, he wanted to head for the Grand Line. Luffy doesn't need to waste time conquering and amassing power. He believes in himself and in the friends that he has made. That's why he went for the finishing blow against Krieg, even if it meant he would fall into the ocean. His focus was on defeating Krieg, and he trusted that one of his friends would save him from drowning. Speaking of friends, we have this final moment with Nami. We haven't heard from her since she stole the Going Merry in episode 23. When Johnny and Yosaku relay the story to Luffy, Zoro, and Usopp, Nami doesn't appear particularly bothered having betrayed her friends. Here, we see how she really feels. We still don't know why Nami betrayed them, and and we won't find that out now. What we do see is Nami's facade begin to crumble. She starts by reflecting on how nice Luffy, Zoro, and Usopp were, and says sort of offhandedly that when she sees them again, perhaps they'll let her join them. The tears streaming down her face show the sincerity behind her words. Perhaps this was the first moment she realized how much she had grown accustomed to sailing with her friends. She says she wants to be free, and we don't need to speculate on what that means now. But given what Oda has already pulled out for these backstories thus far, I would keep those tissues close by.
でも俺もいつか行こうと思ってるぜグランドラインへ
じゃあ今行こう。
まだ時期じゃねえんだよお前さオールブルーって知ってるか
にゃ
なんだ知らねえのかよ奇跡の海の話さ
It's been a pretty dark week of episodes. From Sanji nearly starving to death, to Don Krieg violating the Geneva Conventions, we haven't had a lot of time for fun. So here you go. I decided to run through and mention some of the minor details I loved in this episode. Luffy tries to respect Sanji's decision even though he wants him to come with so badly. Zeph smiling while watching Sanji talk about the All Blue. How does a show get me to laugh and cry over soup? Luffy being a physical representation of me munching snacks while watching One Piece, Sanji's footloose style tantrum, showing us that Sanji learned to fight with his feet instead of his fists from Zeph, Luffy respecting Sanji, and even if it is what he wants, he refuses to make an agreement behind Sanji's back. Sanji is unable to light his cigarette here, perhaps out of nervousness to finally leave. Luffy turning down Zeph's travelogue because he doesn't need it and he knows how special it is to Zeph, and the fact that Zeph knew he wouldn't take it. And look, I'm showing a lot of restraint because some of these moments felt like they could have been the sole focus of their own episode. We're left wondering, right up until the last moment, if Sanji and Zeph will follow old patterns and part ways, having so many things left unsaid. It's not just their specific relationship that we've seen thus far, but a stupid idea that there is something manly about leaving these feelings unsaid. Remember Sanji struggling to light his cigarette? When he asks Luffy if he can travel with him, he has no trouble. His nerves appear to be gone now, or perhaps with the eyes of his mentor and the other cooks on him, he's able to put up the facade he normally does. Even when he tells Zeph he's leaving, neither one of them can say a kind word to each other. But it's clearly weighing on their minds as Sanji prolongs their departure, reminiscing on the times they had together. There are so many moments where things were left unsaid between the two, both men hiding behind their pride. For a moment, it seems that they will be consistent through the end. And then Zeph says,
Sanji! 風邪ひくなよ
The floodgates open, not just for Sanji, but for me as well, and Sanji admits,
長い間クソお世話になりましたこのご恩は一生忘れません
Sanji is leaving for who knows how long to embark on a dangerous journey, and he almost left this man who has acted as a father to him without telling Zeph how much he cared for the old geezer. It isn't just Sanji, as the stoic cooks also break down when they see Sanji's display of emotion. I agree with Oda that it's best not to leave feelings unsaid, especially over something as silly as the need to appear manly.